Hi, I'm William Stewart, co-founder of Telehouse. Welcome back to our verse-by-verse study on the book of 2 Corinthians. We start chapter 8 and a new topic. This is in relationship to the gift directed by Paul to the Jerusalem church, which was in poverty and need. And he asked the Greek cities where he had ministered to contribute to a financial gift to them, which he delivered when he returned to Jerusalem in about 60 AD. So he's recounting his experience with the Corinthians being grateful for that gift. So let's go to the text. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit because it's a story and not densely theological. Moreover, brethren, we do you to make known the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. So he's talking about Macedonia, that they gave in their abundance and joy despite being poor. Macedonia is in the north of Greece. Corinth is in the north part of the lower peninsula called the Peloponnese. How that I bear record beyond their power and their willingness of themselves. Otherwise, that he testifies that they gave beyond really what they had. Quite generous. Praying with us with much intensity that we should receive the gift, the fellowship of ministering to the saints. Otherwise, they took joy in ministering to the people in Jerusalem, and they really encouraged Paul, despite their poverty, to accept his gift. As this they did, as we hope, first gave their own selves to the Lord and to us by the will of God. So they became Christian, and which they had done historically, and serve Paul in their Christian walk. Inasmuch we desire Titus, again, this is Paul's disciple and companion in the ministry, as he begun, would finish in you the same grace. Otherwise, he had sent Titus once before to start this donation, and he wanted Titus to complete receiving the money from the Corinthians. Verse 8, therefore, as ye abound in everything, in faith, utterance, knowledge, and in all diligence, and in your love for us, see that you abound also in grace in this matter. Otherwise, as they develop other aspects of their Christian walk, help in this area as well. 8, I don't speak as a commandment, but by occasion, and the forwardness or the hasteness or the desire of others to prove the sincerity of your love. So he's asking them to show their love to the people in Jerusalem, the Christians, and not by way of commandment. Really, I think by the way of faith. And he puts us in relationship to Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, he became poor on our behalf. Otherwise, Christ was in heaven in glory and gave all that up and veiled himself to live a life of poverty for 3 years with his disciples, teaching and ministering, only to end up dying on the cross. Here I give my advice, verse 10, that is expedient for you, as you have begun before, not only to do, but also to be forward a year ago. Otherwise, as you started a year ago, complete this gift. Now, therefore, perform in doing it. That was a readiness to will, so that there may be performance also out of that which ye have. Otherwise, be ready to give out of proportion or your abundance, because the Corinthians were much better off financially, it seems, than the Macedonians. Macedonians were often a backwater of the Greek city-states. Corinth was a historically well-off port in Greece. Now, history took various turns, like Alexander the Great, etc. And Corinth was destroyed in 146 BC by the Romans, but had done well. Verse 12, for if there be first a willing mind, accept it according to what a man has, not according to what he has not. So otherwise, train your mind. That's how we think in scriptures, to have a godly attitude and to look at what you have and to give what's appropriate out of faith. Not that I mean that another man's burden, otherwise other cities be eased because of you and you particularly burden. So I think he's just wanting to be fair. 14, but by inequality. Esetes could be an equality of condition or proportion. I think in context here, he's talking about proportion. They had more, and he's wanting them to give a little bit more. Now it's your time of abundance that you may supply their want, that their abundance also may be for your want, that there may be equality. As it is written, that they gathered much, had nothing left over. He that had little had no lack. This comes from Exodus 16:8, where the people got up every morning and gathered the manna from the ground that God supplied that they would need that day. Unless it was Sabbath and they collected two portions the day before. If they collected too much, that disappeared, basically rotted. And God was forcing them to trust him every day in the Exodus for their provision, which he faithfully supplied for 40 years. So I think Paul is asking the Corinthians also to trust God for what they have and who they are, and not to depend on that abundance, but to help other people. So he's not telling them not to have it. He's just trying to develop in them a godly mindset towards that abundance. I think the lesson here for us as Christians is that we serve God, all of us, poor or rich or wherever we are. God's goals are our goals. So we look at what we have as God's. I think this will become clearer as the book progresses. And it's to his service, not our own. That doesn't mean we can't enjoy it or spend on things on what we need, save for a rainy day. But we have our money in faith for we're God's managers, basically. And so we spend it out of faith. It's all his. We don't tithe. Tithing is an Old Testament Jewish law concept. I know it's often used by churches to try to push people to give, only because really the amount of people, at least statistically, what I've read, the amount of a year's earnings that people in church typically give is quite small. So 10% seems like a great amount to the pastor, but in reality, 100% of what we have is God's and to his service. But we manage it in faith, according to God's word and prayer, and give out of faith to the needs at hand. And Paul is asking them to give faith to support the people in Jerusalem because of their poverty, but also it supports their ministry because at this point they were the main church in Christianity. So important historically, but still important in terms of ministry. Okay, thanks for joining me today. We will continue in chapter 8 next time, talking about Titus. I hope you'll join me then.